Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Gaza!
Free, free Gaza!
Long live the Intifada!
Long live the Intifada!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Thanks everybody for coming out. And I think we always wish that we come out under better circumstances. For people here today, for a lot of us, this is very personal. Some people are out here because their families, their friends, and their neighbors are under attack back home in Palestine, and people are going to talk about the personal stories, but I think we have to talk a little bit about the numbers of what's happened in such a short period of time. There's been over 125 people that have been killed in Palestine. There's been 900 that have been injured. And I think one of the things for a lot of people that are here is this isn't our first time here, right? We were back out here in 2012 for the same exact thing. We were out here in 2008 on New Year's for the same exact thing. This time they're attacking in Ramadan. And I think this puts forward the lie. This absolute lie about self-defense that's out there that the media repeats. People have been fighting the struggle for year after year since 1948 and before, and the reason for that is absolutely clear. This is not a war. This is not a conflict. This is an ethnic cleansing that is going on right now, and we should call it such. And Israeli politicians, the more honest of them, have actually said this. They don't hide this fact. There's an Israeli politician right now that in the Knesset came out and said, when she was asked about the charred body of Muhammad Abu Khdeir, what did she say in response to that death? She said that all Palestinian children are little snakes, and our war is not against terror, but against the Palestinian people. This is the racism that's at the core of the state of Israel right now, and this is what we have to stand up to. And I want to talk just about a few more things before I hand it over. Our politicians here are out there saying that they want de-escalation. The Obama administration, and all the elected leadership are talking about de-escalation as if they can't put an end to this. Let's be absolutely clear. If the U.S. government wanted this to end, it would be over in an hour. All they would have to do, Obama would have to get on national television, and he would say the $3 billion in military aid to Israel ends right now, until the killing of Palestinians is over. They could put an end to it tomorrow. But let's be honest, let's not fall for any illusions. They're not going to. If anybody is going to put an end to this, it's the people here. It's the people in Chicago. It's the people in London. It's the people in Tunisia, the people in Yemen, and the people in Palestine who are going to stop this. And I'll end on one last note, which is that this could be much worse than it is right now. Israel's been threatening a ground invasion, but hasn't been able to pull it off in full force. And the reason is clear. The U.S. government, John Kerry, and then the Middle East envoy to the Middle East came out and said this thing to Israel. They said, we'll back you to the end. But what they did say is that we cannot stop, and I quote, the tsunami of boycott, divestment, and sanctions that are coming Israel's way. And when we leave here today, I hope that every person, in one way or another, figures out how we can continue to build this movement to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel, and force our government to stop its support for this deadly state until liberation and return.
Israel, Israel, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide.
Israel, Israel, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide.
Black, red, green, white.
Black, red, green, white.
start off by saying that I'm proud of everybody here. I'm proud of everybody that put this emergency protest together. I'm proud of everybody that posted on social media asking their people, their friends, their family to join us today. I'm proud of everybody that's here, and I'm proud of us. I'm proud of us as one, and as a whole, standing for one point, making a point, standing up for what we believe in. We're gathered here today to express our utmost resentment of the current genocide of the people of Gaza. Mere words are insufficient to describe the pain that we feel for the Palestinians living there. Though not seemingly so, Gaza is small in size, measuring at 139 square miles with a population of about 2 million people, making it one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, meaning that any strike guarantees psychological distress, structural damage, and environmental destruction, if not deaths. And although Israel is claiming to have withdrawn from Gaza in 2005, they continue to control borders from sea, land, and air. And as a result, Gaza currently stands serving as a large prison to the Palestinian people, with no freedom of travel or movement, food shipments managed by Israel with specific lists of allowed foods, and the list grows on exponentially. Within the past few years, multiple wars have been waged on Gaza. More specifically, that of 2008 and 2012. During both, thousands of Palestinians were killed, thousands of buildings and homes demolished, many roads, electricity stations, and infrastructures destroyed. And here we are again, in 2014, with another war waged against Gaza. Death tolls are surpassing 126 Palestinians, injuries close to 1,000, and more than 1,100 locations struck. It's important not to define this as a war between two countries, but a capital punishment for the lives of a few Israelis. Do 3 Israeli lives equate to more than 126 Palestinian deaths? Does the world recognize that Israel is the oppressor and the Palestinians are the oppressed? That there is indeed an occupier and an occupied people fighting with the weak means, hoping for self-determination and freedom. The occupier holds about 2 million people of Gaza hostage in a small enclave. Most of the countless numbers of explosives raining over Gaza are supplied by the United States, valuing at billions of dollars in aid given to the Israeli government every year. The United States endorsed weapons are used for capital punishment, the destruction of thousands of Palestinian homes and their quality of life. Our U.S. government is promoting itself as a just broker of peace in the Middle East. Why? But what we see is that we are siding with the occupier over the occupied. Yeah. We mention Israeli right to protect themselves, but there is no mention of the people of Gaza's need to live in peace, safety, and security. Our media feeds us with information about Palestinian rockets reaching further and further into Israel. Images of scared settlers and emergency warnings. Using the art of media manipulation to support Israel's claim to self-defense as an excuse for the current and ongoing genocide against the people of Gaza. As Netanyahu claims to increase their strikes on Gaza, it is clear that the occupied people are faced with 2 options. One of which is to surrender, and the other is to resist. But the way I see it, Gaza has only one option: to show the world the true definition of resistance. We are gathered here today demanding a stop to the Israeli violence, to exercise our freedom of speech, to be heard. As Desmond Tutu says, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of oppressors. I would like to close with one of my favorite quotes floating around social media of a child in Gaza saying, "The rockets may be above us, but they have forgotten Allah is above them."
No more money for Israel's crimes. Not another nickel, not another dime. No more money for Israel's crimes.
You ask me how it is, and I dare to take a side. You say I loathe myself for pointing out that you have lied. You say it's tribal warfare, but I disagree, for the dynamics of the situation are not difficult to see. On one side is the fighter jet, on the other is the stone. On one side is the slave, on the other is the throne. For the many there are checkpoints, while foreign soldiers rule the streets. For one side there's victory, but the people don't accept defeat. The word you need to know is occupation, the very definition of a land without a nation. And if peace is what you're after, then let us not deceive. It'll come on the day the tanks return to Tel Aviv.
I am here since 2 years in the States. In those 2 years, there's 2 major operations happen on the Gaza Strip. Imagine, I didn't complete these 2 years. What's happened there now is a complete massacre and one of the most horrible collective punishment that it's happening in this 21st century. The century of modernity and the century of civilization, as everybody's saying. When we find an occupation and oppressing and killing people with a very cold blood, there is the time for people to stand and say stop for it. I'm a person in Gaza. Since the morning of the very, very beginning of this operation. Is it a rocket or what? Since the very beginning of this operation, I've been stuck to the local radio in Palestine. 24 hours. I cannot take myself out of it because I have family there. I have people that I love and people I care about. I have friends. I have memories. And I have the memory of the place that you cannot even be far of it, even if you are really far physically. The third day, or the second day, I woke up finding 7 people in my neighborhood, just 3 streets away from my house, being killed in a very, very horrible massacre called now, as the journalist says, it's the family name is Kawara family. This family, they alarmed them that you have to leave the house right now or we will bomb the house. And we will bomb it in 5 minutes. People says, no, we don't want for this house to be bombed. And we will go there and we will stand on the roof and we will say, stop it, and we are here civilians. We doesn't have any message, but we don't want this house to be crashed. What do you think they did? They just bombed the whole thing with people in it, killing more than 8 people. And injures more than 30 people there. What do you think if that happened in any of the cities here in the States? What the world will say? I guess the plane have the right to defend itself.
The third day, I was sleeping as well, you know. At least you have to take a rest, even an hour. But I woke up finding on the news, the radio and the news saying, Muhammad Faris' house being bombed right now, and there is 4 injuries at least in the place. I know this person is my nearest neighbor, and any damage at his house will damage my house, and it will create a big problem in our house and in the whole neighborhood. As you know, the average of the weight of the F-16 rocket is 1 ton. It's too heavy, yeah? So I was really angry and hard and seeing what can you imagine that? I called my friend, told him, okay, please go there and find out what's going on. He went, but he couldn't reach, but he was able to reach my uncle through the phone. He came back to me, says, I'm sorry Mohammed, but your cousin been injured, and his injury is very, very severe. And also your uncle and your father's aunt. This is, until now they are still in the hospital. This is an experience that I'm sharing here far away, wishing that I want to be there, while my family now is not in their house, separated in all the other people's families and houses because they cannot stay in their house anymore. So everybody here have an ability, but they are not. Everybody have a power here to pressure your government and to stop these military assistance and the money that goes and help this violence to be continuing and continuing. You have a power. You should use it.
On one side there is hunger and bulldozed olive trees. On the other is the army, ruling by decrees. Caterpillars rule the streets, destroy whole city blocks, while children swallow shrapnel for the crime of throwing rocks. Fences are erected around the towns they flatten, and Herzl's own fanatics sleep on sheets of satin while they water their plantations, drilling ever deeper wells, while the displaced children of the hopeless are filled with bullet shells. The word you need to know is occupation, the very definition of a land without a nation. And if peace is what you're after, then let us not deceive. It'll come on the day the settlers return to Tel Aviv.
I lived my whole life in East Jerusalem, and I considered myself privileged being there, especially in 2009 when I was in Jordan, supposedly gonna celebrate New Year's with my then boyfriend. And then I opened the news and I thought I was watching a movie, except it was not. It was actual blood, actual scenes that I will never, ever, ever forget. That's why I'll never watch movies like that again. And then in 2011, in 2012, we again had to sit and watch, because that's all you can do when you live in East Jerusalem. When it comes to Gaza, all we can do is sit and watch. They're less than 15 miles away from us, but yeah, we're living in misery. We're living with settlers. We're living right now in a place of terrorism when you cannot go outside alone after sunset because it's terror country right now. But nothing compares to what is happening to Gaza, because for God's sake, how much collective punishment within a decade can you impose on one single place, one half a square mile radius with almost 202 million people living there? You say they're targeting Hamas. what is Hamas? If you go, and I cannot imagine what life is over there. I lived in Jerusalem and people feel sorry for me. I'm the most privileged person on earth because I'm in the States. And Muhammad is one of the only people within 3 decades probably that ever got out of Gaza. I get to go out. I got to see Jerusalem. He never saw anything but the half square mile. So there's nothing that I can say about Jerusalem. There's nothing I can say. We're all revolting, but we're all revolting for Gaza. What happened to Muhammad Abu Khtair was hideous, and I know him, and I know his family. But their family, his family, and every family is now doing the same thing that I'm doing, the same thing that Muhammad is doing. We're mesmerized to our TV because people are getting... They're guinea pigs for every single weapon that Israel creates. That's what they are. They're the most open, they're the biggest open prison in the world that nobody seems to look at. They're the people, they're humans, and we look at them as nothing. And I don't understand how a person can look at 2 million people and see nothing. And that's all I can say. That's why I'm here today.
On one side there's the Mossad rounding up the men thrown in jail with no trial, being tortured once again. On the other there is rage, helplessness and fear, and a growing realization that another Holocaust is near. On the outside there are prisons, inside detainees being stripped of their humanity, beaten naked on their knees outside the prison walls, stormtroopers all around, while inside the hungry people yearn for liberated ground. The word you need to know is occupation, the very definition of a land without a nation. And if peace is what you're after, then let us not deceive. It'll come on the day the jail guards return to Tel Aviv.
Silence for Gaza by Mahmoud Darwish. Gaza is far from its relatives and close to its enemies, because whenever Gaza explodes, it becomes an island, and it never stops exploding. It scratches the enemy's face, broke his dreams, and stops his satisfaction with time. Because in Gaza, time is something different. Because in Gaza, time is not a neutral element. It does not compel people to cool contemplation, but rather to explosion and a collision with reality. Time there does not take children from childhood to old age, but rather makes them men in their first confrontation with the enemy. Time in Gaza is not relaxation, but storming the burning noon, because in Gaza values are different. The only value for the occupied is the extent of his resistance to occupation. That is the only competition there. Gaza has been addicted to knowing this cruel, noble value. It did not learn it from books, hasty school seminars, loud propaganda megaphones, or songs. It learned it through experience alone and through work that is not done for advertisement and image. Gaza has no throat. Its pores are the ones that speak in sweat, blood, and fires. Hence the enemy hates it to death and fears it to criminality, and tries to sink it into the sea, the desert, or blood. And hence its relatives and friends love it with a coyness that amounts to jealousy and fear at times, because Gaza is the brutal lesson and the shining example of enemies and friends alike. Gaza is not the most beautiful city. Its shore is not bluer than the shores of Arab cities. Its oranges are not the most beautiful in the Mediterranean basin. Gaza is not the richest city. It's not the most elegant or the biggest, but it equals the history of an entire homeland, because it's more ugly, impoverished, miserable, and vicious in the eyes of enemies, because it's the most capable among us of disturbing the enemy's mood and his comfort, because it is his nightmare, because its mind oranges children without a childhood, old men without old age, and women without desires. Because of all this, it is the most beautiful, the purest and richest among us, and the one most worthy of love. We do injustice to Gaza when we look for its poems. So let's not disfigure Gaza's beauty. What is most beautiful in it is that it's devoid of poetry at a time when we tried to triumph over the enemy with poems. So we believed ourselves and were overjoyed to see the enemy letting us sing. We let him triumph. Then when we dried our lips of poems, we saw that the enemy had finished building cities, forts and streets. We do injustice to Gaza when we turn it into a myth, because we will hate it when we discover that it is no more than a small poor city that resists. We do injustice when we wonder what made it into a myth. If we had dignity, we would break all our mirrors and cry or curse it if we refuse to revolt against ourselves. We do injustice to Gaza if we glorify it, because being enchanted by it will take us to the edge of waiting, and Gaza doesn't come to us. Gaza does not liberate us. Gaza has no horses, airplanes, magic wands, or offices in capital cities. Gaza liberates itself from our attributes and liberates our language from its Gazas at the same time. When we meet it in a dream, perhaps it won't recognize us. Because Gaza was born out of fire, while we were born out of waiting and crying over abandoned homes. It's true that Gaza has its special circumstances and its own revolutionary traditions, but its secret is not a mystery. It's resistance. It's resistance! It's popular and firmly joined together and knows what it wants. It wants to expel the enemy out of his clothes. The relationship of resistance to the people is that of skin to bones and not a teacher to students. Resistance in Gaza did not turn into a profession or an institution. It did not accept anyone's tutelage and didn't leave its fate hanging on anyone's signature or stamp. It does not care that much if we know its name, picture, or eloquence. It did not believe that it was material for media. It did not prepare for cameras and did not put smiling paste on its face. Neither does it want that, nor we. Hence, Gaza is bad business for merchants, and hence it is an incomparable moral treasure for Arabs. What is beautiful about Gaza is that our voices do not reach it. Nothing distracts it. Nothing takes its fist away from the enemy's face. Not the forms of the Palestinian state we will establish, whether on the eastern side of the moon or the western side of Mars when it is explored. Gaza is devoted to rejection, hunger and rejection, thirst and rejection, displacement and rejection, torture and rejection, siege and rejection, death and rejection. Enemies might triumph over Gaza. The most storming sea might triumph over an island. They might chop down all its trees. They might break its bones. They might implant tanks on the insides of its children and women. They might throw it into the sea, sand or blood. But it will not repeat lies and say yes to invaders. It will continue to explode. It's neither death nor suicide. It's Gaza's way of declaring that it deserves to live. It will continue to explode. It's neither death nor suicide. It is Gaza's way of declaring that it deserves to live.
All across the world, you can hear the people say, the children of Jerusalem will be free one day. And overcrowded camps amidst the stench of death and flies to the suburbs of Detroit, you can hear the anguish cries. While in the land of Israel, with God ever on their side, walls and fences are constructed, papers are denied. People fight for their existence while the world turns a blinded eye. And those who should know better insist on asking why. The words you need to know is occupation, the very definition of a land without a nation. And if peace is what you're after, then let us not deceive. It'll come on the day the refugees return to Tel Aviv.